Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this important FAFSA information session. The FAFSA is the way that you apply for federal grants, loans, and work study. And I am so grateful to have an expert from Johnson County Community College, Ashley Jost, with us today. And so she is going to take us step by step through the FAFSA. And then at the end, I will stop the recording and answer questions that you may have.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting my screen going here and making sure
No,
I'm sharing properly.
no problem. I didn't give you much note.
Let's see here. Hold on. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, let me make sure I'm sharing the right one here. I think this is it.
Yep.
Everybody can see?
Now we can.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for having me today, Gina. And hello to everybody that is logged in. So today I'm just going to cover some basics of financial aid, paying for college, what you need to know to get you started in your journey on identifying ways and resources to help you through that college journey. So we will get started. So we'll cover the basics of financial aid. We'll talk about the FAFSA, what you need to file, special circumstances, cost of attendance, including student aid index, financial need calculation, some of those in-depth topics. We'll go over other sources of financial aid. We'll talk about action items, and then of course have some time for questions if needed. So what is financial aid? When you start looking at colleges, you want to hear that word and your ears should perk up. You should really start understanding that financial aid is anything that you're going to use to help you pay for college. There's a lot of misconceptions. Some people think financial aid is just student loans. Oh, I don't need financial aid because I don't want to borrow student loans. But that is not the case. It's a term that we use in the financial aid world as anything that's going to help you pay for college. So that includes grants, which is generally gift aid. It's free money that does not have to be repaid. So you hear that term a lot, as well as scholarships, another form of gift aid, federal work study, where you work while you're going to school and earn an hourly wage. And then, of course, student loans is another option to help you pay for college. Just like a car loan, a house loan, student loans do have to be repaid with interest. And generally, the process begins with the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. Keyword is free. You don't have to pay to apply for federal financial aid. So this is a form that you will fill out through the federal government. We'll go through this in a little bit more detail. It must be filed every academic year, and it uses information that you're submitting from your household, from your income information, and it's also used for scholarship consideration. So this is why it's really important to complete the FAFSA to expand opportunities outside the federal aid program. It can be filed at any time during the academic year. However, when you're researching colleges, you want to make sure that you're looking for a priority deadline or the date that you need to submit your application to have maximum consideration for limited aid opportunities, like scholarships. So for seniors, this is now the time to get prepared and to actually begin filing the FAFSA, start researching colleges so that you're in good shape for the next fall semester. The 25-26 FAFSA is available now. Now, if you're considering, maybe you're graduating early from high school or you're considering starting in the summer of 2026, we would encourage you to complete that FAFSA. However, in most cases, students that are seniors are going to be looking at completing the 26-27 FAFSA, which is also available now. It just opened in October. So this is for students graduating in the spring of 26 and planning to attend college in the fall of 26. Generally, the FAFSA is available every single October 1st. That's actually been signed into law, so it should be available by that date for you to do a renewal FAFSA every year. Because every year you're in college, you will want to complete that new FAFSA to continue your eligibility with the federal student aid programs and scholarship opportunities.
Yeah.
And once you file it once, it's definitely much easier to file it a second time because it's a renewal. Gina, did you have anything to add on that?
just wanted to reemphasize, I think it gets confusing sometimes for seniors which form they fill out because they get in their head, well, this is 25, 26, so I fill out this. And so keep in mind the year that's on the FAFSA that you're filling out is the year that you're attending college. And college is 2 year, 4 year technical, any type of post-secondary education, but you're filling it out for the start date of when you're attending college. So thanks for making that clear.
That's right. And yeah, we're already planning for 27, 28. So that that's going to be coming out soon. So for most of you seniors, that 26, 27 FAFSA, like Gina mentioned, is the one you want to focus on for the fall of 26 semester. Now, the current federal student aid amounts, I'm providing numbers for this current year that we are awarding at JCCC and other colleges throughout the country. So keep in mind, these are numbers that will pretty much be the same depending on what school you're going to. As far as the federal Pell Grant, this is set. When you complete a FAFSA, it's going to tell you if you're eligible for that free money through the government. So the maximum Pell Grant for this year is $7,395. Now that would be divided between the fall and the spring semester. So it's about $3,600 each semester that you could receive in that maximum Pell Grant. Keep in mind that it is tied to enrollment. So to receive that maximum amount, first of all, you do have to be eligible for the maximum amount. And you have to take full-time hours, which at the college level is generally 12 or more credit hours. Now you could be available or eligible for a little bit less than that. The FAFSA will tell you exactly how much you could qualify for. FSEOG, or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, is a campus-based fund that's provided by the Department of Education to schools. So this amount and eligibility for that program is going to vary by school. So just as an example, we provide students about $500 a year, and generally we tie that to students that also have Pell Grant eligibility. So it is another free grant program that could help provide additional funding. The federal work study program, this will vary by institution as well, but this is the working while you're going to school. It'll depend on the amounts available, the jobs available at the school. Right now, we pay $15.34 an hour, which is actually pretty good. So I encourage you, when you fill out the FAFSA, if it says you're eligible for work study, this is a great chance for you to work on campus, to build your resume, to get involved, to really expand on that, especially if you've never worked before. A lot of our students come into college and they start working through the work study program, and it really, really helps to get your foot in the door into your career as you begin college. The direct subsidized and unsubsidized student loans. So the maximum amount that you could borrow in those student loans, remember, a loan you have to repay. For an undergraduate first year freshman, we're looking at $5,500 total for that first year in college. Now, the difference between the two, the subsidized or the unsubsidized, ties to financial need, which we receive from your FAFSA results. So we're going to provide you as much as we can in that subsidized student loan, which means the government would take care of the interest on that loan while you're attending school at least half time. So that is very important to know the difference between that and an unsubsidized, where the interest would start accruing on that loan as soon as you take that out. And if you've never borrowed a loan before, you know that interest can definitely capitalize and it can increase on your student loans. So we want to look at the subsidized version when you are taking out a student loan, taking that out first and working with your college to make sure that you understand exactly what you're borrowing if you are taking a student loan. The Direct Plus loan, this is an option for parents that can be borrowed through the Department of Education. So students, once you file your FAFSA, your parents could borrow a student loan through the Plus Loan program after you've done that. They will complete their own application, and that can be offered up to the cost of attendance minus any other aid that's already received, with a cap of $20,000 annually. So this is a new change. If you're familiar with Plus loans in the past, this will be a new change starting in the summer of 2026. So for your first year in college, a parent could borrow up to $20,000 annually. And for the lifetime loan borrowing for a student, it would be $65,000 that a parent could borrow as a maximum under this Plus Loan program. I like to cover the student loan interest rates just to let you know that this is a really great option if you do have to borrow student loans. Going through the FAFSA is your application for the federal student loan program. So there's no credit checks or anything like that for the student side, and they allow you to borrow up to those maximums that I provided. The student loans through the federal government have very low fixed interest rates, and they have flexible repayment options when you are done with school. So you can see right there, the fixed interest rate for this current year is 6.39%. Now the new interest rates come out every year, so you would anticipate a possible difference in your interest rate every year of your loan, depending on what those are. Now I will tell you that the loans actually decreased as far as the interest rates this past year. So it's possible that they may decrease depending on what's happening in the government and with the treasury rates. So to get started with that FAFSA or free application for federal student aid, you'll need a few things. You'll want to have a FSA ID or studentaid.gov account. We'll talk about who needs to have one of those accounts. You'll want to have your school choices. You can list up to 20 schools on your FAFSA. So if you're on the fence with a couple different schools, you want to make sure that you know exactly which ones you want to include on your FAFSA so that you don't miss out on a priority deadline if you are considering applying to multiple institutions. You'll need to have your tax return information, including schedules and W-2s to have for reference. And for the 26-27 FAFSA, it's going to be looking at 2024 tax and income information. Information on current assets and untaxed income information. And for parents of dependent students, so generally if you're under the age of 24 students, you're going to have your parents' information on the FAFSA. So even if maybe you didn't work or file taxes, it would be required to have your parents' income information reported. To create your account is very simple. You go to studentaid.gov or FAFSA.gov. They are essentially the same website, and you're going to use the button up top to create an account. Now, currently, when you create your account, you're able to use your studentaid.gov account immediately to sign off on your FAFSA. So that is a big change from previous years when we've had to allow 1 to 3 days. So that is an instant verification. So
One thing,
go ahead, Gina. Sorry.
earlier Ashley said the application is free, so make sure you go to that .gov account that she listed. There are some .com or other sites out there that will charge you. So if you get to a site that is charging you for completing the FAFSA, you're on the wrong site. So make sure you're going to that .gov.
Right. So for your studentaid.gov account, you're going to use that for FAFSA completion, and it'll allow access to certain Department of Education websites. And if you do borrow a student loan, that is how you will log into your account to do a master promissory note, to do loan counseling and complete that process. So the student and any contributor that's required on the FAFSA would be required to have an account that's verified for you to actually complete the process. So if you're have a little bit of time, you might want to go ahead and create your account before you actually begin the FAFSA process. And then students, you can ask your parents to do this process as well. So every contributor, I mentioned the student's parents, and if you're a student that's married, you wouldn't necessarily include your parents on the FAFSA, but it would be your spouse. I know we do have some students in that situation, especially as you go through your college years. So the account is tied to your Social Security number, and that is created under each person. So again, students, go ahead and create your account now. If you have an email address that you're going to be using for your college search purposes, applications for scholarships, I would use that email account to set up your FSA ID, because when you're done with high school, your high school email account is going to go away. So I'd either use a personal or one that you set up for this process. In most cases, we're going to need one parent that is considered a contributor on the FAFSA, but it depends on how we file our taxes. And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. To begin the FAFSA process, again, keep in mind what Gina had mentioned, that you want to complete the 26-27 FAFSA form in most cases. However, you can see at the bottom on the FAFSA page there, there's the option for the 25-26 FAFSA form as well. So just make sure that you're in that right age year before you begin the process. We always encourage the student to begin the process when it comes to actually filing the FAFSA. It is possible for a parent to start that on behalf of the student as a parent, but when you're on the FAFSA landing page, it's going to tell you exactly the roles, and you will just make sure that you are identifying the correct role. So if I'm Alex on this FAFSA form and I'm the student, I want to make sure that I'm indicating that when I begin this FAFSA for 26-27. So there is consent that's required. So the consent essentially means that, hey, you're consenting to the Department of Education connecting with the IRS system to pull in any tax information as well as the Social Security Administration. So that consent must be provided by any contributor as you begin this FAFSA process. And the online application is going to walk you through those steps. So just read through that to make sure that you understand what that entails. Now, when you've provided that consent, it's going to let you know that it's connecting out to the IRS system and it's importing your information. So if you do have tax return out there, it's going to pull that information in seamlessly into your FAFSA. You're not going to see any numbers or additional information, and that's for security purposes. That all pulls in on the back end of the FAFSA. So that's not public view for you as a student or for your parents as a contributor on the FAFSA. So when the student begins the process, they're going to provide consent and include information about personal circumstances. It's going to ask you how many people are in your household, again, what colleges you're planning on going to. You're going to answer questions about who is your contributor on the FAFSA. So who are your parents? And your parents are generally your biological parents unless you've been adopted. And that will ask those questions for you to identify who has to report information on your FAFSA. Demographic information, of course, financials will be included, and at the end, you will sign off on your FAFSA submission. So let's talk a little bit more about parent information. As I mentioned, your parents are your biological or your adoptive parents. If you are in legal guardianship, those people are not considered parents unless they have legally adopted you as a student. So keep that in mind. If we're living with our grandparents and we do not have contact with our parents, there are questions that will be asked on the FAFSA for you to help identify that. If you ever have further questions, you can go out to studentaid.gov or speak with your counselors, and they can maybe help guide you on the right path to answer those questions. But I always encourage you to speak with a financial aid administrator or a counselor if you have any questions about how you should be reporting information. So for parents, the parent of record or parents of record are the parent or set of parents who provide more than 50% of the student's financial support in the past 12 months. So in most cases, if we are parents that are married, filing taxes, we're the biological parents, we would just need one person that has an FSA ID to sign off on the student's FAFSA. If we are in a situation where our parents are divorced as students, then this is where we're going to go back to this question as who provided the most financial support over 50% during the past 12 months. So if that can be answered with one parent, then that would be the parent of record on the FAFSA. If that parent is remarried, then the step parent would need to be included on the FAFSA. So we would not include our actual biological parents. It would be that one parent who provided more than 50% of the student's financial support. Now, if that is truly even, then the next question the FAFSA would ask is who is the parent or set of parents that provided more than, or that has more than the most greater income or assets. So that would be the secondary question if it is truly a 50-50 split. Now, if parents are divorced and we have a divorce decree that says the student is reported on this parent's tax return 1 year, this is the next parent has the student on their tax return the next year, that does not matter for FAFSA purposes. We are still going to go back to the parent that provided more than 50% of the student's financial support in the past 12 months. So again, seems complicated, but when you're going through the FAFSA, it's really going to ask you those questions to identify who the contributors are on your FAFSA. So it really should clarify that more as you get into your FAFSA students to understand that. I talked about cleaning the taxes, but child support also comes into the picture as well. So you can read through that there to see a little bit more. And when you're on the FAFSA itself, when you've identified which parent or set of parents, that's when you're going to send the invitation, students, for your parents to contribute to your FAFSA. So all you need is your parents' email address to send that invitation out for them to connect to their piece of your FAFSA. So once you've invited your parents, the parent will receive an email inviting them to the student's FAFSA form. The parent can access the form by accepting the invitation in the email, and they can also use the link that the student may see on their form to send that invitation link out or provide that directly to the parents with the access code that's available. Now, parents, you can access it through the email that's provided, but you can also go to the FAFSA homepage, and there's a button that says accept invitation, and that is really an easy way to just go ahead and accept an invitation and put this code that the student has provided you. Students, when you're finished with your section, you'll see that your section is complete, and you'll also see your pending invitation for your parents. If for some reason we put the wrong email address, this is how you would get back into that. You would log back into your FAFSA landing page and check on your status, and you can see exactly what's happening with the parent section of your FAFSA. Now we're looking at the parents view a little bit closer. So parents, when the student has finished their section, you're going to receive this email. It's going to look just like this. You can accept the invitation directly from the email, but again, you'll also have this access code where you can go directly to your FAFSA.gov page, accept the invitation, and log in that way with your access code. So there's a view of inserting that invitation code on your FAFSA invitation page. So as a parent, you're going to expect to see the same types of questions and sections that a student had, except for college selection. So you have to provide consent. Your tax information is going to pull in once it connects to the IRS system. And all of that information will combine on the back end with your signature and then provide a little bit more on the students. So personal identifiers, demographics, financials, all of those sections will be completed when you do your piece. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is family size. So you will indicate how many people are living in your household, how many people are attending college. If you have additional people in your household that you provide support to, let's say we have an aunt that's living in our household and we're providing more than 50% of their support, you want to make sure they're included in your household size. Just read those questions carefully to make sure that you are including everybody that could be considered in that household view. Parents, when you're done with your piece, that FAFSA is ready to go on for processing for the student. So it's considered complete, sent for processing, and then the student will receive an automatic email letting them know what's happening as well. So students, you can log into your account, you can view your status and see where it's at. Generally, it takes about 1 to 3 days for that FAFSA to process and provide you your FAFSA submission summary. So the schools included on your FAFSA will receive a copy of that. Just know that depending on the institution and when they are beginning to pull in the FAFSAs for the year, you may not receive an update from them until that process starts. So in the meantime, you want to be applying for admission, making sure that you're doing everything that you need for scholarships, sending in any transcripts until they connect the FAFSA on the back end. Now, it's not required that you apply for admission to the institution, to do a FAFSA. You can do a FAFSA, send it to any school. It's really, where are you at in the process? Are you ready to apply at that institution? Because at that point, then they will be able to connect your FAFSA to your application and let you know even more information. I know as a community college, we will probably not begin pulling in our 2020, have to even think about this. We're in 25, 26, but our 26, 27 FAFSAs we're not going to be pulling in until probably later in December, early January. However, some four-year institutions may be pulling that information in November because, FAFSAs can be filed now. So that information is coming in, they're pulling that information in and starting to communicate with students.
Yes.
So let's review this FAFSA submission summary a little bit more. Go ahead, Gina, sorry.
I was going to ask a clarifying question. So I always recommend to students list any college you are considering attending on the FAFSA. Then, like you said, it doesn't mean you can fill out the FAFSA first or the application for admission first. But if you're considering the college, list them on the FAFSA up to 20, as you said, and then basically nothing happens with that at the college level until they've actually applied for admission. So no penalty to listing a college
Correct.
and deciding not to apply there. Just kind of nothing happens with the college processing the FAFSA information, but better to list it than to have to go in later and
Right.
and change your FAFSA and add a college that maybe later you decided to apply to. That be correct?
Yeah, or miss out on one of those priority deadlines. I know
Yes.
our four-year like KU, K-State, I mean, you're looking at December dates. So you want to make sure that you have this FAFSA sent to them by that point so that you don't miss out on any limited aid that they may be providing.
Yes.
So
One other
those are the important dates.
Yes. And one other common question I get more from parents is sometimes there is a hesitancy to complete their side of the FAFSA because they have a misinformed idea that that is going to obligate them to contribute a certain amount toward their students' education or obligate them to take out a loan. So could you speak to the difference of contributing their information to the FAFSA as opposed to whether that obligates them to anything as far as paying for college?
That's right. For the student loan program, if a student borrows the loan, that's under the student's name. So the parents, would not necessarily be responsible for that at all. Unless parents, you take out that plus loan. That one is taken under your name on behalf of the student. And also on top of that, just because you fill out a FAFSA doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be offered or taking out a loan. There are additional steps that have to be done to accept a student loan. You have to do a loan counseling, a master promissory note. So it's not really easy to just say, oh, I'm applying, this loan's going to be put on my account. I really don't want that. That is not the case at all. And parents also, when you're submitting your FAFSA piece on that student's FAFSA or your parent contribution portion, that information is really just to help identify the student aid index, to let the college know what your student could qualify for in aid. It is not an obligation by any means on your end, other than having that information and providing it so they can have that complete and accurate picture of the financial need. So on this submission summary, that student aid index would be listed. You can see this student example here has a negative 1,500, which means that they're eligible for pretty much all federal student aid programs, including that Pell Grant, the need-based, the maximum amount there. So that is what's important. It's important for you to do your piece so that the student is not penalized or miss out on a priority deadline, and so that FAFSA can be fully processed. So yes, no obligation on the parent's end at all. However, I would say it is a family decision when it comes to colleges and looking at the cost. So you all need to be on the same page to understand what that obligation is going to be on the student's end and how they're going to pay for all of those things. And we'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about the cost of attendance here in a moment. So this submission summary, again, will be emailed, but you can access it anytime through the federal student aid system by logging into the FAFSA, studentaid.gov. You'll get to this landing page. The other thing too is that login that you have, you're going to use it every year to complete your FAFSA, but that is showing you any aid that you may have borrowed in the student loan program, or if you received the federal Pell Grant, it's going to have that tally of that information for you at your fingertips every year when you log in. When your FAFSA has processed and you receive this submission summary, maybe you did forget to add a school on there. It is possible to go in and make a correction and to add a school and resubmit your FAFSA. Maybe the school that you have applied to has your FAFSA information and they say, oh, it looks like there might have been an error on your FAFSA. We want you to go in and make a correction. They will provide you details on how to do that, but it's super easy for you to log in and to make changes and to reprocess your FAFSA if you're instructed to do so. Another highlight too is when you receive this initial summary, if you look up top on the right-hand side, you see that there is a next steps and it has like a little alert exclamation point. If you see anything like that, or if you receive information on this submission summary about action you need to take right now, go in and take that action. Make sure that you're doing the steps that are needed. So just in summary, is the FAFSA required for all types of aid? For the federal Pell Grant program, yes, that FAFSA is required to access any of that free money from the government, including the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Scholarships, it's not always required. If you're looking at merit scholarships, they may not need that FAFSA information. They might be looking at ACT scores, your involvement history, your role in your family. All of those things might be included in a scholarship view, not necessarily the financial need calculation from the FAFSA. Work study for the federal program, it is required to have that on file. And of course, the federal student loans, you can borrow student loans from other things or other organizations, banks. We'll talk more about that. But for the federal student loan program, yes, the FAFSA is required to access that student loan. Special circumstances. When you're filing your 26-27 FAFSA, it's looking at 2024 tax information. So a lot of things can happen within 2 years because you're not starting college until next fall of 26. Maybe we've had an unusual uncovered medical or dental expense. Maybe we've had to pay for dependent care for someone in the family, or we've had a loss of employment or income. Maybe there's been an unfortunate passing or divorce in our family, and our income looks a lot different than what was reported on the FAFSA, because the FAFSA is really just a snapshot in time and pulling that information directly from what happened income-wise in 2024. If that is the case, we encourage you, after you filed a FAFSA, to go into the financial aid office and speak with the administrators there. Basically, a special circumstance are conditions that exist that cannot be documented with that original FAFSA, or circumstances that have changed dramatically since filing that have impacted our financial situation. The college will let you know exactly what's needed to apply a special circumstance or to appeal for that, and they will follow up with you on anything that you need. Make sure that's documented. And if anything is changed, that would be sent out to the Department of Education. It could potentially impact that student aid index number that you received and impact your eligibility for need-based aid programs. So definitely, if any of those situations were something that maybe looks like you've experienced or it has happened by the time you begin school, go to the financial aid office. That's what we do. Now, looking at the financial need and cost of attendance, this is where you're really going to want to start researching the schools and understanding the true cost of attending college. We set a cost of attendance budget every year. It says this is how much it would cost for this student to attend our college. We take into account tuition and fees, housing and food if you're living on campus, if you're living off campus. What is it going to cost for you to attend for the year? Books and supplies are included in that, as well as transportation, miscellaneous and personal expenses. All of those things are packaged into this budget. Then we look at the student aid index. So that number comes directly from the FAFSA. That you saw on your FAFSA submission summary is what tells the school the measurement of the student and family's ability to pay for the post-secondary expenses. Again, it's not what has to be paid, it's just a calculation that we put into our need. So we take that cost of attendance number, which will vary by institution. We subtract out the student aid index, which comes directly from the FAFSA. So that's going to stay the same unless we have any special circumstances that would warrant a change. If there's any difference between the two, the student has eligibility for financial need. Okay, so that is truly important. And that includes need-based scholarships as well. So just a couple things to highlight for 26, 27. Changes with the FAFSA. You will see on there, it will ask about your assets. So if we are a family farm or we have a small business with less than 100 employees, family business, those assets will be included from our student aid index calculation. So that does get asked on the FAFSA. So you want to make sure that if we are in a small family farm, small business, or a commercial, excuse me, a family fishing business, those things would be included as far as assets, not necessarily the income, but the assets would be excluded. That Parent Plus loans are capped at $20,000 annually. So that is a change that we're expecting to see starting in 2026. Can you get an estimate? So we've gone through the information here. Maybe you aren't quite ready to file the FAFSA just yet, or you want to see a little bit more about what you could qualify for through the federal student aid program. It's completely possible to take a look at that. You go out to studentaid.gov or the FAFSA.gov, and in that search box, just type in estimator or estimate, and it should pop up this federal student aid estimator. It's going to ask you information that's specific to your situation, your income, what college you're planning on attending as far as what their costs are. It's not going to ask you anything specific like your social security number or anything like that. So it's going to provide you a general estimate of what you could qualify for when you input those numbers. So I always recommend going out and taking a look at that just so you have an idea of what happens after you file a FAFSA. So other sources of financial aid, we talked really heavily here about the federal government. So accessing those aid programs is only available by completing the FAFSA. But the state of Kansas, other states offer opportunities for aid programs. The colleges that you're planning on attending offer aid programs, scholarship programs, private sources, organizations, employers. If you work somewhere that offers tuition reimbursement, check with the HR office. Maybe you're a parent and your employer offers a scholarship program for your students to attend college. Definitely check with your employers because there are a lot of sources out there as well, beyond just completing the FAFSA or applying for scholarships at the institution. I'd like to talk about the Kansas Promise program. This is an amazing opportunity here available just in our state. It's only available at certain community colleges, and like Washburn Tech offers this program as well. It is a last dollar scholarship that can pay for tuition, books, and Kansas Promise eligible course related materials. Now, what that means as far as last dollar is, let's say you receive a scholarship for $500. Well, that definitely helps cover tuition, may cover a little bit in your books, but that may not cover everything. So Kansas Promise would come in last dollar and pay the rest of tuition and fees plus books and supplies. Now, this is only available for certain programs that are high demand, high need, high wage actually careers here in the state of Kansas. And the intention of Kansas Promise is to keep students in our state in these career areas. So let's say you're looking into nursing or industrial technology programs like HVAC, welding. All of those are generally considered under the Kansas Promise program. You can go out to the Kansas Board of Regents website. We actually have a link on our page if you want to go to jccc.edu/Kansas Promise. It'll give you kind of a summary of the Kansas Promise program, but on the Board of Regents website, you can search through all the colleges that offer Kansas Promise and what programs are covered under this program. Now it is, again, a service scholarship. So in exchange for the state offering this opportunity to help you pay for your community college program or your career program, they want you to stay here in Kansas. They want you to live and work here for 2 years after you finish your program of study. So just know that there would be a commitment to that service when you're finished with your program. And it looks like maybe we have a question. We'll see if we've got any questions out here on Kansas Promise. The FAFSA is required for Kansas Promise. However, the income limits are a little bit higher than what you would see for somebody that could qualify for full Pell Grant, because the intention of this program is to help students that cannot receive, the free money through the Pell Grant, or maybe can only receive a portion of that free money. So the income limits are covered over on the Kansas Board of Regents website that talks about Promise. The Kansas Promise application is required. That can be completed on the Kansas Board of Regents website. And we encourage you to apply as soon as possible because this funding is becoming very popular. And it is limited in the fact that, some schools may receive an allocation and those allocations can go pretty quickly depending on the demand for the program. So if you're interested in Promise, you want to get your FAFSA in as soon as possible and complete the application through the Board of Regents as well. Through the Board of Regents, when you're out on that site, you're also going to see some of the other opportunities that they have for students in the state of Kansas. So different grant programs, different scholarships, those are definitely things to consider as you're looking at applications externally. We talked about priority deadlines, and I want to explain to you that some schools may have a scholarship application that's separate from the admissions application. So you want to make sure that you find those opportunities and apply for those by the priority deadlines. Now, even if you miss a priority deadline, if it's possible to still apply, definitely apply because you may be considered in a secondary round of awarding. Just know that those things may be set. However, we would always encourage you to still apply. And that even includes the FAFSA. So the FAFSA, remember, is open all year. So even if you miss that priority deadline, you want to make sure that you complete the FAFSA as soon as possible. Now for JCCC, I like to cover our dates just so people are aware of what that looks like. For the 26-27 FAFSA, we want to FAFSA in by March 15th. That is our priority deadline for next fall of 26. The 26-27 JCCC scholarship application priority deadline is April 1st. We expect to have our application open sometime around January 1st. If you are a student that may be taking dual college classes, I recommend looking at those colleges to see what they may require, but we would require a student to submit a major change form as well as send the official 7th semester transcript. Now, for you high schoolers, that 7th semester transcript is the transcript after your December grades post. So for us, we are looking for that official one to be sent after that date. So generally request that in January, February, and we will have that here on file so that we can consider your high school GPA for scholarship purposes. Mentioned KU, K-State, their scholarship priority deadline is December 1st. So that's coming up here pretty soon. You want to make sure that you get any applications in by that date to be considered. I like to talk about our JCCC scholarship opportunities. If you're here in the Johnson County area, we do offer a CAV guarantee scholarship. So if you have a 3.25 or higher GPA, we guarantee you $1,000 scholarship for your first year here at JCCC. We've talked a little bit more about Kansas Promise, but I also want to cover our STEM scholarship opportunity. If you're looking in the fields of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, we have an amazing grant that's been provided to us by the National Science Foundation. And with this grant, if you're considered under STEM scholarship program, you would have mentoring, you'd be visiting our 4-year partners to learn more and to be prepared for your future transfer into one of those programs. But you could receive up to a $10,000 per year scholarship each year for 2 years at JCCC. And we have over 300 other scholarship opportunities. That makes us a really smart choice if you're thinking about coming to a community college first. Definitely consider us here in Overland Park. Now, private sources are also available for outside scholarships. So we want you to start looking now. Check with the financial aid office at the school that you're planning on attending. Your high school counselors are a great reference. Local libraries, local foundations. I know here in Kansas City, we have the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, which has hundreds of scholarship opportunities for students to search and apply for. Check with your church or religious organizations, Rotary clubs, again, parents' employer, your employer. Look at scholarship search tools and databases. Begin that process now. Also, if you've been involved or if you have somebody that can help you with a letter of recommendation to kind of cover the service that you've provided, you want to know who those people are now and start asking them to help you write those letter of recommendations, or at least let them know that you may be asking them for a letter. We talked about the federal student loan program, but there are private sources available for you to borrow. Now, this may be as a student or parent, so you may be considering looking at opportunities outside of the federal student loan program to borrow to help pay for your student's education. Just know application will be required. There would be credit checks, possibly a cosigner might be required. Interest rates are going to vary depending on credit. Are any fees required? What are the borrowing limits? When does repayment begin? There's a lot of questions that you need to ask when you're looking outside at opportunities to borrow. But these are just some of the sources that we have known over the years. Sallie Mae, Community American Credit Union here in Kansas City area are options to borrow. And following up on your financial aid is critical. So once you've applied for admission, completed your FAFSA, make sure that you check with the institution to see if any additional information is required. Review that financial aid offer carefully. Go back to some of the talking points that I had today. Look at what's being offered to you. If it is a student loan, just know that you would have to borrow that loan. And is that something that you want to do to help pay for your education? Be aware of payment deadlines. If you have an accepted financial aid offer, will that protect you from being dropped from your classes? Just understand when those payments are required or when you have to have aid in place to make sure that your enrollment is secure. Prepare for your books and supplies. Do you have a scholarship that will help you pay for your books? If so, how is that applied? Do they have a voucher available for you down at their bookstore? Do they load that to your student ID card? Just know what you need to do to be able to get those things in order for classes. And then maintain satisfactory academic progress. Certain GPAs may be required. They may look at your completion rate. If you are dropping any classes while you're in college, we always recommend that you speak with the financial aid office or counselor first before you make any of those decisions, because it could impact your eligibility to receive aid for a future semester. And don't forget, you must reapply every year for FAFSA and scholarships. Depending on the type of scholarship, they may require that you do a new application or submit documentation of your grades or completion in your classes before they provide those funds again for the next year. And here's some action items. I talked a little bit about creating a personal email address for the FAFSA and external scholarships. Now is definitely the time to do that. And again, do not use your high school email because that's going to go away. This is the time to start researching colleges. If you haven't taken a visit or a virtual tour at a college, do that now. That's a really great way to kind of see what college may be the best fit for you. And as you're researching that, you're probably going to hear a little bit more about when you need to be applying for scholarships and what you need to submit to be considered for those scholarship opportunities. Create your FSA ID early. If you aren't quite ready to do your FAFSA yet, go ahead and create your account today. It literally takes 5 to 10 minutes to complete your FSA ID or create that account for it to be verified. And then when you're ready to file the FAFSA, you'll be in good shape with no questions there. Keep those credentials in a safe place because remember, you will reuse that information every time you want to log in to either complete a new FAFSA or see what maybe your student loan balance is, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, research those scholarship opportunities as soon as you can. If you need help with the FAFSA or want a little bit more information about starting scholarship applications, seeing what external opportunities are out there, we are going to have our college financing night. It's scheduled for November 19th. That is a Wednesday evening from 4:30 to 7 p.m. And it's going to be in our Rainier Center here at Johnson County Community College in Overland Park. We'd love to see you. You can scan that code right there, or you can visit our website and we have a link for you to go out and RSVP for this event. Even if you're not planning on coming to JCCC, we'd love to have you there. We're here to provide assistance about the FAFSA and help you complete that process so you're in good shape. Any questions?
Just wanted to make
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I don't have any questions.
Okay.
because Ashley did such a great job.
Thank
Just
you.
wanted to add a couple of things. So I love that you emphasize to create a personal email address if you don't have one yet, because often after you graduate, as Ashley said, you won't have access to that high school email anymore. So if you have applications or even logging into your FAFSA, you won't be able to access it with that email. So I also wanted to reiterate to create a professional email. So if your personal email is not professional sounding, remember this is an email that scholarship committees are going to see, admission reps. So make that a professional email and something, you also need to check your email. So often the information that you receive back is going to come via email, whether it's FAFSA information from the colleges, scholarships. So you really need to be checking that email on a regular basis. If you do want to register on a scholarship search engine, I highly recommend that. It often is going to pull, you'll create a profile about yourself. And then the idea is, I won't say it works perfectly, but the idea is that it, searches the internet, finds the scholarships that match you, and then generally is going to email those to you. So it does take some time because you need to create your account. And then again, you need to check your email because there are so many scholarships out there. So you'll need to check that, check the requirements, see if it really is a good fit for you, and then actually fill out the application. So sometimes if students don't check their email for a month, then they get overwhelmed with all those emails that are coming in. But I would be happy to help you find one of those engines, help you register if you need help with that. I would recommend only registering on one site because they generally should be sending you the same information, so you don't want to duplicate that. Going Merry or FastWeb, those are two that I often recommend, but there's a ton out there. Ashley said this, but I want to emphasize to double check the colleges that you are interested in and that are applying for admission. Make sure you check the financial aid or scholarship tab on their site, because sometimes even if the admission application includes the general scholarship form, there might be other scholarships through the college that have a separate form. Another great way to get that information is make sure you're in contact with an admission rep from the college. So they all have admission reps for your area. You get connected with them. Always, good to have contacts at the college. And then as she said, also at the financial aid office. So I'm happy to help as much as I can, but it's always good to have a financial aid expert from the college answering your question. And then again, just want to reemphasize the importance of completing the FAFSA. If you qualify for grants and money that you do not have to pay back, grants and scholarships, of course you want to accept that. And those grants you're not going to be eligible for or won't know you're eligible if you don't apply. It's also a great way if you are considering multiple colleges. The reality is out-of-pocket cost often is one of the factors that determines your final choice. And this is the way that you can really compare apples to apples. What is it going to cost you out of your pocket after the aid that they offer you, to know what that cost is going to be? Because as Ashley said, the cost of attendance at colleges can vary greatly. So to have that financial piece of what it's going to cost you is really important in that decision making. So for you, it's the time of filling out the application to the college and filling out the FAFSA. So the trade-off or the payout is that it gives you some very valuable information and also hopefully some financial aid as well. So I am going to stop recording just in case we do have